Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next big thing in business, Africa. With 55 countries, 1.3 billion consumers, and a growing middle class, Africa is the ultimate frontier for investors. The numbers speak for themselves. 3.4 trillion GDP by 2025, and 6 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies. From agriculture to tech, infrastructure to energy, Africa offers vast opportunities for innovation and growth. And with the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, in effect, the possibilities are endless. Join us as we explore Africa's potential, uncover secrets to success, and discover why it's the next investment frontier. Get ready to be amazed, inspired, and motivated to tap into the African opportunity with our session's moderator, Mr. Amit Jain, Director of the NTU-SBF Center for African Studies, a think tank on Africa that looks at business, economy, and trade. Thank you. Firstly, we shall invite His Excellency Ahmed Mostafa Abdelaal Mohamed, Ambassador of Egypt to Singapore, to share his views on investment and trade potential in Egypt. Ambassador is a career diplomat with 31 years of experience in several positions at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs headquarters, as well as 7 Egyptian embassies before his current ambassadorial position to Singapore from the 1st of November 2023. We shall now invite His Excellency Jean de Dieu Uwihanganye, High Commissioner of Rwanda to Singapore, to share more about doing business and sustainability in Rwanda. The High Commissioner previously served as Rwanda's Minister of State for Transport. During his tenure as Minister of State for Transport, he oversaw the implementation of Rwanda's land, air, and water transport policies and decisions. Prior to his appointment as Minister of State, the High Commissioner managed and directed various construction projects and held several senior positions with a leading construction company in Rwanda with branches in other African countries. Now we shall invite Her Excellency Madiepetsane Charlotte Lobe, High Commissioner of South Africa to Singapore, for her sharing an overview of investments and trade in South Africa. Her Excellency is the former Acting Chief Operations Officer of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, DIRCO, and the former Chairperson of the DIRCO Departmental COVID-19 Steering Committee. She is also the founding president of the African Women Leaders Network, South Africa. We welcome the High Commissioner for her insights on this panel. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. MC. Thank you all. An honor to be here among this esteemed panelists here with me. My name is Amit once again. I'm the director of the NTU-SBF Center for African Studies. It's located right here in Singapore. It's the only think tank that looks at Africa from a business, economic, and trade perspective in this entire region in Southeast Asia. So I'd encourage you, if you are interested in the continent, to visit our website, subscribe to our newsletter. When we talk about business in Africa, one of the most common adjectives that often come into play are words like challenging or difficult or risky. I will try to demystify some of those perceptions here today with my panelists. Before we begin, may I ask everyone to switch off their mobile phones or put them to silent? We'll start with each of the speakers perhaps making a 10-minute pitch, and then we will get into a conversation. So if I can ask Ambassador Mostafa. Yes, please, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Amit. Do you allow me to say my few remarks while standing on the podium
Please.
first? Then I will say to resume discussion.
Please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's not an official speech, so I will not address or I will not mention names, but I will thank Sun Media very much for inviting me for this important event. This is my first year here in Singapore, so I'm privileged to be with you today, and happy birthday to Sun Media. I always believe in good and important connections between diplomacy and media. I myself, I studied mass media many years ago in the pre-internet era. Actually, it's a big responsibility to speak about my continent and my country. But I will start with what Mr. Amit mentioned about the misconceptions. I am going to be direct to the point because I have only 10 minutes. It's not a lot, and even let me tell you that what you see in any video or something like what we saw now is much less than what we already have in our continent, in our countries. The misconception about Africa has to be corrected, and it's a responsibility of African countries and the whole world as well. We all know that there are some challenges in making business with Africa, but let me tell you that in the last 10 years, a lot of changes have happened in our continent, to the better. I will not talk about figures, but I will tell you frankly that Africa has a lot of potentials and abundance of natural resources, including human resources, which I consider part of natural resources, that can benefit the whole world and be sufficient to fill the gaps of many things, starting from food to technology as well. So our continent is really rich, and we still have a lot of potentials and resources that have not been tapped in sufficiently. And again, this is a mutual responsibility between African countries and the whole world. Here in Singapore, it's a far place relatively, Southeast Asia, but we have good relations, economic relations and political relations with Southeast Asia since many years. But we are not satisfied. We are not feeling that we reached even the minimum limit of potential and possible cooperation with Africa. If we were talking about emerging economies in the world, I think most of them exist in Africa. And the reform and the progress that happened over the last 10 years, including our three countries, I will not, of course, speak on behalf of my colleagues, but I tell you that we had a lot of reforms in terms of making our economic environment much better than before. I do believe that for people who are interested in making business in Africa, they have their own tools to start studying the potentials and opportunities. So this is, if I want to talk about Africa. But talking about my own country, again, I'm not going to burden you with slideshows or figures, but I can tell you briefly about the advantages that my country, Egypt, has. Of course, the population of Egypt and the economy of Egypt and the geographical location of Egypt puts it among the most powerful economies, one of the most powerful economies in the continent. But again, we have a lot of ambitions. Our cooperation with the whole world has become much bigger than before. I'm not saying that, of course, you expect the ambassador of Egypt to say that everything is rosy back home. No, we still have some challenges, internal challenges, but this did not prevent our partners to increase their investments in Egypt, to increase their trade with Egypt, including Singapore. The Singaporean investments now in Egypt is bigger than any time before, and we have a lot of advantages. Let me speak about them because I have only 10 minutes. I consumed 5 of them already. So let me remind you of some strength of the Egyptian economy that I'm sure that many of you know them or know most of them. The first one, of course, is the large market. Internal market in Egypt, we are 110 million people, and we are also a gate to many African and Middle Eastern countries. This is a historical thing since the dawn of history. Maybe more than 4,000 years ago, Egypt was maybe the first country in the world to make maritime trade with other countries, which was at that time Kenya and Somalia. We are one of the largest market in the continent, of course, and we are also party to many regional and international agreements, including the Continental Free Trade Agreement, COMESA. We have also partnership with the European Union, with Mercosur, with Northern America. The second thing, the second strength pillar that we have is we are one of the most diversified emerging economies in the world. The structure of our economy is very diversified between agriculture, industry, trade, tourism. Suez Canal is part of it, of course. IT, transport and storage and logistics areas in Egypt. I'm not giving any data now, but I'm inviting you to explore more, and your studies can start with the embassy here in Singapore. We have open doors to whatever questions or inquiries about what I'm going to talk about today. The third pillar is very well known to any primary school student, which is the geographical location of Egypt. Look at the map. Usually, the first thing in the center is Egypt, with Suez Canal and its unique geographical location. This is a big asset in terms of trade and exporting or re-exporting. So I will not talk much about this because it's very well known. The fourth one is the vast market, internal market, but the quality of this market, because, and this is actually everywhere in Africa, 60% of the Egyptian population are youngsters, under 30 years, under 35 years old, with very good level of education, skilled labor, and cheap to far extent. The fifth pillar is the competitiveness in doing business. We have come a long way in facilitating doing business in our country. The General Authority of Investment has a good website. You can visit it and see how easy to start a business now in Egypt. And also the procedures of making import or export to Egypt has become much easier than before. I want also to talk about one strong pillar that we have, one of the strengths that we have is the infrastructure. Infrastructure now in 2024 is completely different from what it was in 2014, only 10 years ago. Egypt is number 18 worldwide in the index of road quality. We were much less than that, but now we have accomplished a lot of achievements in terms of infrastructure, including roads. Let me tell you that we have 7 maritime ports and 27 airports. And of course, everybody can tell you that the infrastructure in general in Egypt has become much better than before. The political stability and the high level of security is also a very important element in attracting investments. And we can see this everywhere in Egypt. And of course, we have also a lot of other advantages like the financial inclusion and the digitization of customs and digitization of tax collection and easiness of transferring money overseas for any investors. I always believe that it's important in any business community, including here in Singapore or in any other country, to ask each other. We have 8 big Singaporean companies working now in Egypt, and they could be a good promoter for more investments to come to Egypt. Some of the representatives of those countries are here today, like Olam, of course. And they have very good business, and it's even increasing in Egypt, which means that this place is a very attractive place for investors and for trade as well. Egypt is doing well also in terms of exporting some agricultural products, like we are #1 worldwide in exporting oranges, world #1 also in exporting dates, frozen strawberry, something like that, which means that we have access to international markets in all continents and in the whole world. It doesn't need any more confirmation from me that it's very important for the Egyptian economy and for our strategic partnership to have more investors and more or bigger trade balance with the whole world. We are still importing most of our needs from the world. This is a fact. So we export and we import, but of course we import more. I assure at the end of my remarks, I hope I didn't exceed 10 minutes, but I assure you again that our continent and my country is full of opportunities. And we have to start a journey of mutual exploration of what we have, because it's the youngest and oldest continent in the whole world. Our ancestors mainly came from Africa, and Africa is a very young society. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, ambassadors. And as you know, Singaporeans are big travelers, so it's a home of the world's oldest antiquities. Take advantage of the low Egyptian pound now. Try and travel to Egypt. Ambassador Jain. I beg your pardon, High Commissioner Jain.
That's fine. Both is very fine. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I wanted also to thank Sun Media for inviting us and giving us this opportunity, and happy birthday. We really appreciate the platform you give to us, of course Africa, but also other continent. Well, I know, I think the energy is kind of getting low in the room. Is that because next is gonna be the lunch? So don't worry, we're gonna try to be very quick. It's self-explanatory, but then give us some few minutes to hear the amazing things about Africa. I mean, Ambassador spoke about Africa in general. I'll just add, on Africa, add the idea of demographics. It kind of self-explanatory itself when you look at the demographics, the future of the world population, and that in the next 20 to 30 years, among 5 people in the whole world, you'll have at least 3 or 4, 3 of them are Africans, because in Africa, African countries are the only countries where the demographics is still growing. We have more young population. I think more than 60% of Africans are under 30. And again, one point to note, because the future of the world is also going to be technologically driven. And of all those under 30, kind of 70% of them own smartphones and now. So if you're looking at the future in each and every industry, you're talking about whether it's technology, whether it's agriculture and so on. There's no other places you can do that other than Africa. Moving on from Africa to my country in Rwanda, I will try to be pretty quick because the video kind of explained it, all of it. Have you guys heard of Rwanda before? I'm trying to hear the voice, see if you guys can still follow me. Obviously, you've heard it. Even in the video, it's called The Land of 1,000 Hills. I just talk about the opportunities we have in the country, but first, we will talk about, in general, why would you, could you do next? Why would you invest in Rwanda or be interested in Rwanda? We've had a strong economic growth. I mean, we all like growth. I think today when the conference started, we're talking about high growth, and Rwanda has been growing steadily for the last 20 years on an average that is beyond most of African countries, so on an average of 7%. And when you're talking about investment, the first thing you're looking at is going in a high growth area or nation. So Rwanda has been averaging around 7%. And we position ourselves as a strategic gateway to Africa. We're building a new airport. It's going to be one of the best airports, which is going to be completed in the next few years. But apart from that, we're also attracting a lot of other airlines to come to Rwanda. So we market Rwanda as a strategic gateway to Africa. So when you're coming to Rwanda, it's not necessarily about the market in Rwanda, which is very small, 13 million, but it's also about surrounding markets in East Africa and being part of COMESA and so on. So now let's go to the opportunities, making it pretty quick. You know, just kind of highlighted some few opportunities in the country. And some of them, I will start with health, which we're trying to develop recently. And the number one in health, it's they were building the Kigali Health City. I mean, those here in Singapore knows Singapore has some different health cities. We're building some of them to be able to capture many Africans who usually go and seek health, medical attention outside Africa, you know, in India, in Europe, and we welcome them in Rwanda, and we're looking for partners to help us build different Kigali health cities. There's different hospitals, of course, which we want to expand to, again, in the same vein to be able to attract and empower the capacity of Rwanda to handle the incoming African people who are seeking medical attention in Rwanda. There's also opportunities in agriculture. We'll talk about agriculture. Food is the most important item we've been talking about since the morning. And one opportunity I wanted to highlight was what we call the Gabiro Agri-Business Hub, which is an area of around 20,000 hectares that the government has done, put in irrigation and so on. And the first phase was completed, and all the land was taken by off-takers. And we're looking at going to phase 2, and hopefully for those who are here could be interested and can partner with us to do the second phase of Gabiro Agribusiness Hub. There's also many companies expanding abroad. I mean, because of the partnership, we're talking about Africa. When we're discussing here is that Rwanda was allocated land in many other countries in Africa. I've just highlighted some of them in Mozambique, in Central African Republic, and Republic of Congo. And all these land are waiting. We're looking for partners to work with and expand and go to those land across Africa and be able to produce a lot of agricultural items in those countries. Mining. With regard to mining, we're looking for partners as well to partner with us in most of it develop, extract, but also importantly process minerals. And of course be able to trade them. And these will be either lithium, Rwanda have proven to have lithium, gold, rare earths, and 3 Ts, tin, tungsten, and tantalum, or some precious stones such as gemstones. Also, there are opportunities for mining outside Rwanda. So Rwandan companies were given concessions in some countries outside Rwanda, and we're looking for countries to work with us in those countries outside Rwanda, whether it's in the Central African Republic, in the Republic of Congo, or Mozambique, to partner and explore those mining opportunities, whether to develop them or process them. Real estate, when you're in Singapore, you definitely have to talk about real estate. It must be very interesting. Kigali Innovation City, this is more or less like one north of Silicon Valley. We're developing an area which is going to be a hub for innovation across Africa. We've spoken about young Africans. We've spoken about Africa not owning smartphones. We've spoken about universities that are training Africans. We want Africans to be able to be able to innovate, and Rwanda to become a hub of future startups and future large companies. And that's all going to be housed in Kigali Innovation City. We've had big companies already coming in, which is like BioNTech and some other pharma. We're looking for partners to come and invest in real estate in the Kigali Innovation City. There's a project that is already ongoing. So hopefully people will attend and don't miss out. There's also a different building, like this building that's going to be located next to the famous Rwanda Convention Bureau. There's also residential areas, condos and others. This is a phase 2. Phase 1 is fully completed. And affordable housing, you're looking at least 40,000 units per year. That is 100,000 units per year that is needed. and the unit purchase value is around 40,000. So hopefully this is very interesting for many of you or other people who are interested in that. Green economy, I think the previous panel was talking about sustainability, but we're looking forward to create and implement the first ever green city in Kigali. With earmarked around 10 hectares where we are going to put the first green city. The master plan is there. It was done by a Singapore company, Sabana Jurong. The design is being done. The land is ready. The people who are going to take the houses are there. We're looking for partners to come and join us and build this first green city in the next 4 years. Gas meth, this is an innovative project as well that extracting the gas through the lake, one of the largest lakes in Africa, which is the Lake Kivu. So that's also an opportunity in the green economy. So telcos, it's traditional opportunities. I won't speak much about it. We're looking for the third telco. We now have MTN and Airtel. So if some of you know people who are interested in running telcos in the country, it will be interesting to welcome them. Manufacturing, I was happy to see President of SMF this morning. So for the SMF members and those in manufacturing, we have done a feasibility study, and there's a project that is ready, which is about glass manufacturing. It's going to plug in the market that's pretty scarce across Africa. It's ready. It's looking for some few investment. Other investors have taken it up, so it's a good opportunity for, and there is no better partners to work with other than the Singaporeans in such needy construction material is a big market across Africa, because as countries grow, they will need to continue build and substituting the imported materials such as glass is important. So this is a great opportunities for Singaporeans and everyone who is around here who might be interested. Obviously FMCG, and then my last one I think is going to be on tourism. Beautiful things, we're creating a Kigali Cultural Village. The project is ongoing. We're looking for people to partner with us. And we're looking for developing this area, which is the western part of Rwanda and Land of Thousand Hills. So hotels and entertainment venues in that specific area. I think that's it for me. And we have one unique institution that attracts for investment. And in our High Commission, we have a representative of that institution. It's called Rwanda Development Board, more or less like a EDB here in Singapore. And these are the contacts, and you can have it through us. So all in all, that's it. Opportunities are there across the whole Africa. Opportunities are there in Rwanda. Rwanda is mostly known as one of the easiest places to do business in the whole world, and it's very safe and progressive. So hopefully we can have much more discussion around it. Thank you.
Thank you, High Commissioner Jain. Madam High Commissioner Charlotte Lobe, please.
Thank you very much. I thought that for the purpose of today, I will spend 7 minutes on the African continent and 3 minutes on South Africa. And the reason for that is that in South Africa, we believe that none of us is more beautiful than the rest of us. And as a result, there's beauty in unity, although we are as diverse as we are, with about 55 nations united in their diversity. I'm not sure if we are ready to roll. As they are putting up the presentation, I want to just build on what was raised earlier on, and the point that was made was really about the narrative about the African continent. And I thought for a conference like this, it's important for you to acknowledge that in the public discourse, there are two narratives that defines Africa or characterize what Africa is or ought to be like. And I have used two terms to define that. The first one is Afro-pessimist narrative that portrays the continent as a child in need of help, a place of poverty and disease. Afro-pessimist show Africa as a place. On the other hand, Afro-optimists show Africa as a place of creativity, agency, pride, and a rising power. And I wanted to say something about the Afro-pessimists because in the popular narrative, you would see that the African continent is portrayed as this child who is so fragile, who needs everyone's support, and in order to build on that narrative and for it to have a lasting impact on our minds, we see that it's supported by images that dates back as far as 1985, when one African country was faced with catastrophic famine. In 1985, Ethiopia was at a peak of a catastrophic 3-year famine that claimed lives of about 1.2 million people. This led to international community mobilizing humanitarian interventions for the people of Ethiopia. And key amongst this, as you'd remember, was the charity song, "We Are the World." That was something that was done to assist one African country, Ethiopia. But in the media space, in the public discourse, it has played out to mean that every African country is faced with famine. Every African country still in 1985 in Ethiopia. And I thought for the purposes of today, we will need to just talk a little bit about that. I know I'm between you and your lunch, so pardon me a little bit. In addition to that, you have seen a number of concerts happening in the UK, where a number of other artists were raising funds for the African continent. The impassioned pleas for the world to lend a helping hand for life by giving to Ethiopians raised millions of dollars. All these efforts are well appreciated, but for the record, for the purpose of what we are here to do today, it is almost 3 decades since the story of Ethiopia broke out, but every conference that you attend, Africa is the face of poverty. Africa is the face of disease. Africa is the face of children who are not able to go to school, and I want us to change that narrative today. The steady rise of Africa from shackles of poverty, underdevelopment, poor leadership, disease, corruption, and usually conflict is not properly reflected, and there is no show of progress from Ethiopia 1985 to Ethiopia 2024, which the situation is far different from what you've seen in 1985. Now back to what is nicely in front of you. What is the truth about the African continent? The truth about the African continent is that Africa is a cradle of civilization, and in my view, perhaps the future of humanity. It possesses a rich tapestry of culture, resources, and resilience. And as I have already spoken on this, I won't repeat that. For the purpose of today, I would want us to look at what Africa can provide to the world. And one of the things that we must note with appreciation is that Africa has the highest return in agriculture, mining, livestock, and is a place where investment in infrastructure has a potential of changing lives of over 1.5 million people that constitute 18.3% of the 8.2 million world population. Ambassador, I am a student of politics, so in politics we are taught to use 3 rhetorics: ethos, pathos, and lego. So I'm trying to use numbers, take a bit of emotion from people, but also give them facts. So I hope you won't be offended by that. With the Africa Agenda 2063, Africa is becoming more integrated into the global economy and is predicted to increase its future economic role. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area is the largest trade agreement in the world. It brings together 54 AU member states plus 8 regional economic communities to create a single market. I'm sure you are asking yourself why I say 54, not 55. There's one country that is yet to fully sign on to the Africa Free Continental Trade Area. The second thing is that infrastructure, for those of you who would want to invest in the African continent, provides huge opportunities as a backbone of economic development, facilitating trade, connectivity, and access to essential services. The AU has developed this nice program that is called a Program for Infrastructure Development in Africa. This program is aimed at addressing challenges by promoting regional infrastructure projects in sectors such as transportation, and those of you who are in these sectors, you may be interested to invest in the continent, in energy, and as well as in water resources. Now, the African continent is estimated, as Ambassador of Rwanda has said, it is estimated that Africa's population will reach 2.5 billion by 2050 and will constitute a quarter of the world's populace. Sub-Saharan Africa will soon be the only place with birth rates at the replacement level or at higher level, while majority of economies like China, the US, Europe, and including Singapore are expected to see major demographic declines. By 2034, the continent is expected to have a larger workforce than either China or India, and we are also expecting that this would have huge impacts on job creation. It is estimated that Africa will add up to 796 million people to the total global workforce and be the home of the largest and youngest population by 2050. The median age for the continent is 18, and if you can look at the median age for other countries, you'll realize that this is 14 years younger than any other region in the world. As a result of these favorable demographics, the African middle class is anticipated to reach 1.1 billion by 2060. Why should we invest in the African continent? And I say African continent because you invest in one African continent, it's a success story for all of us. So I would prefer that instead of saying invest in South Africa, I ask you to invest in the African continent. Africa offers new and growing markets for foreign enterprises and is a promising investment and sourcing terminus for businesses across different sectors of the economy because of the following reasons. The first one is our economic growth trajectory. As you are aware, Africa is the fastest growing economy in the world. Two, because of infrastructure development, I've said this a little bit earlier on, there's a lot of opportunities in that sector. Three, our trade potential. Trade barriers are falling in the African continent, and intra-Africa trade holds enormous potential. But we also believe that trading with other countries outside of the African continent also has great potentials for us and for those countries. First, we start with the need for us to strengthen South-South cooperation in the areas of trade, and hence most of our countries have now developed interest in our relations with countries like Singapore and all other countries in the ASEAN region. We also promote North-South cooperation because we believe that in this world that we have with its challenges, with geopolitical tensions, we exist as the global South and the global North, and there's a need for us to try and work together in promoting what would be a better world for humanity. The fourth point is diversification. Africa offers diverse investment opportunities beyond commodities. And the last one is harnessing digital innovation, and Ambassador of Rwanda has already spoken about this. I am about to wrap up. I have said what I wanted to say about the African continent, and that is sufficient for me. We have the whole entire week to talk about South Africa and opportunities in South Africa in September in partnership with Sun Media. The last points I wanted to make, number one is that Africa is a home of the largest mineral reserves, and we are putting points there, and I hope the presentation can be shared with everyone because I won't be able to go through everything, so we ask that the presentation be shared. And because of all those, there are 5 things that we are asking as South Africa in Singapore. The first one, we are asking Singaporeans and people living in Singapore to cooperate with the African continent. The second one, we are asking people living in Singapore and Singaporeans to trade with Africa. Number 3, we are asking that you invest in Africa. Number 4, we are asking you to visit Africa. Number 5, we are asking you to be a friend of Africa. If you are able to do those 5 things, those big asks, then as the South African High Commission in Singapore would have achieved, the Embassy of Egypt in Singapore would have achieved, the Embassy of Rwanda in Singapore would have achieved, the Embassy of Nigeria in Singapore would have achieved. That is all that we are asking for. And thank you very much for listening.
Could you have asked for a better pitch on Africa today as the 3 esteemed panelists have done so? We are running out of time. What I would do is just ask one question and we can wrap up because we are between you and lunch. High Commissioner Charlotte, that was a fantastic pitch that you just made. You know, for years South Africa was the envy of the rest of the continent. It had the best infrastructure. It is still a very open economy. But if I can be a devil's advocate here, it is performing well below its potential. Growth rate is barely 1%, and 40% of its youth are still unemployed. Power blackouts have reduced, but they still exist. Labor costs is something that businesses complain, and there is urban crime. What is South Africa doing to deal with these issues?
Thank you so much. Firstly, let me correct you. So the first correction is that the power blackouts are no longer in place in South Africa. In 2020, the President of South Africa made a commitment that by 2024, South Africans would not see power cuts. And since the beginning of the year, there has not been power cuts, and most people thought it was because of elections and all that, but it was because there was a plan, and the plan was that South Africa identified what was the real problem that South Africa was faced with. And I'm going to make an example here with only that part. You would know that by 1994, only 10% of the South African population had access to electricity. And after 1994, government had to make sure that all South Africans have access to electricity. And that meant that we needed to increase our power grid and make sure that we increase our power stations, but also look at other sources of electricity generation. Now, by 2021, we had improved our capacity to have more power that we can give to all South Africans. And this included us focusing on other sources of energy outside of coal, and this would include sources such as green hydrogen and green ammonia. And because of the science that we have used in providing electricity to our people, issues of electricity cut are issues of the past. So I thought I needed to just clarify that before we go any further, then we can deal with the other issues. I think most of the African countries were affected by COVID badly. And after COVID, then we had these geopolitical tensions that somehow impacted negatively on our economies. And of course, we are not doing as good as we would want to, but I can tell you that we're doing better than we did in 2020 at the time of COVID-19. If you look at our figures, you'll notice that where South Africa was at the time of COVID-19 and where we are today, we are building better together, and we are trying very hard to improve our numbers. And I'll make an example with our economic trade flow between us and Singapore. During the COVID times, we had what we would call a trade deficit because Singapore was selling more to South Africa than us selling to Singapore. But if you look at the figures today from the OECD, you'll notice that we are actually doing very well with respect to that. And Singapore is just one example, but it has been proven that we have improved a lot in the other countries. But let me say that when you think about it, and in the spirit of my presentation today, I would want you to look at it from an African perspective and how Africa is building better together in various sectors of the economy. You will notice that, for example, Nigeria, which is one of our biggest economies, and I think we should welcome the head of mission of Nigeria, who has just come to Singapore about 2 or 3 weeks ago. You'd notice that there is a lot that the government of Nigeria is doing in building the economy of Nigeria, whether from the oil side of things and their mineral resources to the entertainment industry. If we can credit Nigeria, is how they have built the entertainment industry as part of creative arts. And all of these factors says to us as the African continent that if we can work together and build our economies, by 2030, the African continent as you see it today would be different. Assisted by the Africa Free Continental Trade Area, but also assisted by the political will of our leaders to turn the leaf for the African child. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Certainly, investor confidence has surged since the government of national unity has come to power. I have to be fair, Ambassador Mostafa, Egypt really has, and correct me if I'm wrong, has pipped Nigeria as the second biggest economy in Africa. Nonetheless, rolling blackouts is nothing new to you. You had improved the electricity supply significantly. Inflation is running at 23%. Egyptian pound has lost 40% of its value, and Egypt has turned to the IMF and UAE and other countries for bailout. Do you think in that kind of an environment, the massive investments and ambitions that you have with your new administrative capital and New Cairo and all the real estate development that's going on, is sustainable?
Thank you for the question. I also wonder the source of your numbers you got now, because the talk about the electricity cutoff, actually it was a temporary thing, and it ended about 2 months ago. And it was because we depend on natural gas. We are a natural gas exporting country, of course. And can you hear me? Okay, sorry. And there was some interruption. Yeah, I think this one is working. Thank you. So now there is no problem with electricity. In terms of inflation, yes, it went up very much last few or 2 years actually. But let's look at it. I mean, for inflation and the devaluation of the currency as part of the comprehensive economic reform happening now with cooperation with IMF. But if we are talking today about investment potentials and opportunities and trade investment with Egypt, this is something is really growing by all statistics. Even if you ask the IMF or any independent international organizations which evaluate economies, yes, as I said in my remarks, I don't say that everything is rosy either in Egypt or all African continent. But let's look at the future and let's look at what we are doing as governments and people. We are working hard to make ourselves more eligible partners to the whole world. And there is no doubt that we are in a much better position than what we were 10 years ago. I'm again, like my colleague from South Africa, I'm not talking only about Egypt, I'm talking about whole of Africa. We are in a much better position, and we started to attract more and more investments to our continent. But the question is that we want, and we agree on this in all African continent, we want to diversify our partners. We don't want to be only partners to our friends in Europe or in America or in China. With our due respect, they are very important to us. But we want to see more sources of investment and trade with the whole world for many reasons. I don't have time to explain them, but I'm sure that everybody in this room can understand why we want to diversify our partnership, and especially with Southeast Asia, for many reasons. The most important of which is that we don't have any political sensitivities with this group of countries. And we are happy to say that always. We have only history of friendship with a country like Singapore, Thailand, all Asian countries. Also with China, of course. We have very good background and very good presence. So why don't we push our cooperation furthermore? Coming back to the difficulties you're talking about in Egypt economy, yes, we have some difficulties, but it's not as bad as you mentioned. But and again, refer to those who are doing business with Egypt, whether trade or investment, and ask them, do you really find any difficulties? This is the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. One final quick word from High Commissioner Jain. You know, structurally, Rwanda is very different from Egypt and South Africa. Much smaller, it's landlocked, and very heavily dependent on what's happening in its neighborhood. You know, we have been watching the Mpox pandemic. How is Rwanda dealing and battling with it?
Well, thank you for asking that questions, because I think it fits pretty well with the African narrative. I think I was speaking with some people who were planning to go to Rwanda, I think this morning. They were telling me, look, I mean, we're so worried because we'd heard about Mpox in Rwanda, and therefore we don't think we'll come. But then I told them, you know, Singapore had, I don't know, 30 cases of Mpox. Was it in 2022? And I think no one even knew that it was over there. But I think because it's Rwanda and it's in a country in Africa, you think we just, because Rwanda now declared, I think, 4 cases of Mpox. It's just 4 cases. They were all traced. They are well managed. If you look at the track record of, I mean, let's talk about Rwanda. Even during COVID, it's ranked as one of the best in managing COVID. Mpox, which is relatively easier to manage, couldn't be a problem. So, I mean, but anyway, we are near the epicenter of Mpox, which is Democratic Republic of Congo. Rwanda has only 4 cases. They were all traced. They were isolated. And Mpox, the way it's explained these days, it's not easily transmissible as it was in COVID. So Rwanda remains very safe on that side. But on the second side is that we have a track record in managing diseases, and I've spoken about COVID-19, but it's not only for Mpox now, it's also for COVID, for all other diseases, not only in Rwanda, but also across the region. I mean, Mpox is not the first outbreak. In that region, in Uganda, in Burundi, in many African countries, there's always diseases that got broken, and our health systems are familiar with that. So I just wanted to give assurance to anyone around there that Rwanda is still safe, events are still going on, and the outbreak is manageable, and it's nothing of concern so far.
I wish we had more time. Thank you. But please join me in thanking our panelists.
Thank you to the panelists, and please remain at the center of the stage to receive a token of appreciation by Mr. Sunil and Ms. Nomita.